Welcome to Bets on the Future, where we highlight the various career paths in the electrifying metals world. From the vehicle you ride in to the bridge holding it up, metals are everywhere. Why not in your career too? I'm Jennifer Betts, a metals industry veteran with almost 20 years experience, here to highlight these incredible career paths as told by the women who are living them. Lisa Shelton has been working with pre-painted metals for about 30 years now. Her background spans working at various companies within the supply chain. She started working at the coater, who applies the paint to the metal, to the service centers who distribute pre-painted metal, to the paint company that makes the paint that goes on the metal. She has a wide view of all the aspects of the supply chain that supports customers who consume pre-paint. And you don't need a degree in anything specific to learn the industry. Prepaint is a niche part of the metals industry, and Lisa is a testament to the fact that once you get involved in a part of the metals industry, you can move around within the supply chain. Your career path can take you in a lot of different directions. The more you learn, the wider your path for job opportunities in the industry can become. Just jump in somewhere and you'll be surprised where you can go. The metals industry is a great place for women to work. Your backdrop is fantastic. I have to know more. Like, where are you? Like, did I interrupt a vacation? What's happening here?
Well, we bought this thing about a month ago, and we've been trying to get it ready where we could take longer trips. So this coming weekend, we're just doing Friday night and Saturday night close to home in case there's something that doesn't work or we don't have what we need. But the long-term plan is to be in it a lot more often and to be doing my job from wherever I am, because that's the beautiful thing about the kinds of jobs that the salespeople have, where you can talk on the phone, be on the internet, just like this. Where I am, I can do something like this, and that's the beauty of it. But yeah, we haven't done much with it yet. And it's 25 years old, so we're going to try to restore it a little bit too. We're excited about it.
That's really a fun journey, and also I think it's a great sales pitch for our industry as well.
Yeah.
Not every job can be on the road. For those that are listening and can't see Lisa's background, it's a fantastic RV, recreational vehicle. So it's not your typical office backdrop that we tend to get on this podcast. So I had to ask. It looks incredible.
We're excited about it.
For those who are unfamiliar with Lisa, she has been in the industry for many years, and very honored for you to come on the podcast. We've spoken, had a few conversations in the past. Our paths has only recently crossed, in the past year. So for those who are unfamiliar, do you mind just giving a quick background on who you are, who you work for, and what your experience has been?
Yeah, of course. Well, you're right on that. I've been around for a long time. You can tell by the hair color that being in this industry will give you gray hair, unfortunately.
It happens.
So I started my career in '93. So I'm in my 30th year right now. I started in the pre-paint side of the steel industry, and I had no idea what I was getting myself into, but I started at a coil coater, which is where they put paint on coils of steel. Worked there for about 5 years, and then I went to work for one of our customers, which was Ryerson. And Ryerson's a huge service center. Worked there for about 11 years, and then went to another service center for a couple of years. Went to Axo Nobel, a major paint manufacturer in the coil coatings industry. Worked there for about 12 years, and lo and behold, I am back at Ryerson again for my second tour of duty. And the entire 30 years that I've been in this industry, I've been working with painted metal products, which it's pre-painted. We can talk a little bit more about what that means, but 30 years in it.
Congratulations. And you're giving the second tour a whole new meaning with your RV in the background. I feel like you need to get like a banner on the side of it, like just have it sponsored by Ryerson as you go across the country through your territory.
About that and see if I can advertise.
Right? I mean, you're talking about pre-painted. I feel like you've got some technology at Ryerson where maybe you could paint out, some sort of nice metal Ryerson side on the side. For those who are unfamiliar with like just metals and steel and coils in general, why pre-paint? Like why would somebody in the supply chain decide to pre-paint versus, making their final product and then painting it, then putting their touch on it? What are the benefits there?
So when a manufacturer is making a product in high volume, pre-paint lends itself to high volume production processes. So what you'll find is that there are certain industries that have gravitated towards it and use it exclusively. It's everyone in their industry has already converted to using pre-paint. And then there's other markets and industries where they dabble in it. Certain parts have a high enough volume for it, but for the most part, if all you're painting is a couple of parts here and there, it's not going to make financial sense. It's kind of like anything done in a production environment. The more you do, the less your cost per piece, and in this case, it's the less cost per ton to put paint on. It's a high speed application of paint, so we can literally paint a truckload of material in 20 minutes, 30 minutes.
Wow.
And these paint systems are specially designed for whatever the person's making. So as an example, if you're making a garage door, it's going to be fabricated to be a certain color. It's going to be made to live outdoors and exposure to sunlight and resist fading. Whereas if you're making a dishwasher in a kitchen, they won't have the exterior exposure kinds of things, but they need to make sure that if someone spills mustard down the front of their dishwasher, it doesn't leave a stain. So there's food contact things in that paint spec, which are very different from some of the outdoor product specifications that you would see for things like a garage door or metal roofing.
Okay. And so for, the everyday person, I'm stealing this from another podcast, but essentially when we start getting a little technical about the metals industry, I'm going to use my husband, Eston, who's in the biomedical field, somebody that's completely unrelated to what we're a part of. What are some of those common products that your pre-paint material goes into? Like something that the everyday person could understand?
The largest part of the market segment, and it's roughly 70% of the things that are painted, are on metal buildings. And we've all seen them. And it goes anything from a pole barn, that somebody might put up a pole barn in their yard, to gas station canopies, the tops at the gas stations, to we put a new school up and it has a metal roof on it and it's bright blue, or churches, they'll put metal roofing on. So 70% of the market is served in some part of the metal building, whether it's the walls or the roof panels. And just like any other product, they each have different performance things that you would expect, because a roof has, a 45-degree facing the sun. That exposure is highly different to something that's vertical, where the sun only hits it certain parts of the day and that sort of thing. So even in that market, you'll see varying paint products that survive different things that gets exposed to. I mentioned, dishwashers, but major appliances is another area where there's a lot of pre-paint used. Washing machines, dishwashers, refrigerators, almost all of those have some aspect of painted. If they're not fully made out of stainless, there's probably some pre-paint on there. Heating and air conditioning, lighting fixtures, the ballast box lighting fixtures that you would find in the ceiling, a lot of that is all pre-painted. Those are some of the more common consumer industry types of things that you would find pre-paint in.
That's very interesting. And it feels like a niche of the market, when in reality, when you're saying 70% of the metal buildings are this particular product. I mean, how do you get into this? How did you find that particular world? It doesn't seem like that's like, here's a college course or a high school course on pre-painted material.
It's funny because over the years, people have asked me, how did you end up getting into this? And my answer every time has been a whole bunch of things went horribly wrong.
We're going to change that narrative. We're going to have people seeking this out in the future because of this podcast.
I joke It's kind of a funny way of breaking the ice with people, but honestly, I never set out to be in this industry. I answered, and this is how long ago this was, that you used to answer ads in the newspaper to find a job. And I answered an ad for a customer service representative at this, which was a coil coater. I didn't know what they were, but I go in and looking for a customer service job. I was hired. Sat down at the desk on my first day on the job, and I was like, I have no idea, anything about this. I had to learn about steel. I had to learn about gauge tolerances. I had to learn what galvanized coating thicknesses were. All the things about metal, because every bit of paint that we did always was applied over metal, and we had to know about not only the paint but also the metal. So literally a great training program at the company where I came from. And I'd say the other half of it is just me being the kind of person that's curious about how things work and asking a lot of questions, and finding the people that can help, with the answers that I needed. So, but no, never a college course in this. You could probably take a college course in becoming a metallurgist and then learn on the paint side of it. But with regard to the paint side of it, there's just not a lot that would direct you here. And I've made a whole career of it.
It's been really impressive. And most people, like you said, would have no idea about this, that this is even a career. That when I'm looking outside my window and I'm looking at some of the products that you mentioned, most people don't realize that that's a career. Like the products that surround our whole life, from the vehicles to the bridges to the air conditioning units, because we're recording this during the summer, spoiler alert if this gets released later in the fall. But most people don't look at the products that make our lives possible and see a career in it.
No. And the other thing, it's not just carbon metals that get painted. There's a whole industry of aluminum products, gutters, downspout. The RV industry, there's a lot of painted RV products. It's truck trailer, the walls of a truck trailer when you see semis driving down the road, a lot of that is pre-painted metal. So it really is everywhere. It's one of these industries that no one's ever heard of, and you have no idea that that's the way these products are made. I've always thought it'd be a great episode of how it's made.
Yes. Yes, it would. The metals industry, when you're talking about, the van trailers being made of aluminum. So I started on the opposite side of you in terms of the supply chain. Like you're more towards the finished product. You're selling to the end consumers, the physical products that people use. I am now, I started off on the other side, the scrap metal, the recycled materials, if you will. And when you're talking about van trailers, I learned that van trailers were made out of aluminum siding because I would go to scrap yards and I would see them ripping them apart, taking the walls down, and then I would buy the aluminum that's off those van trailers. That's literally how I figured out how everyday products, what they were actually made of. Did they stick to a magnet? I carried a magnet with me all the time, right? Just because sometimes, because of your very well done paint, it's sometimes difficult from looking at the naked eye to see if that's aluminum or steel, etc. And you gotta stick a magnet to it.
Yeah. Well, and I just quoted a guy yesterday for a job that we've been talking on and off, and he finally wanted to put a quote together because he's quoting for a school district in California, and he had to, as part of his bid for the pre-painted metal product, he had to disclose the percent of recycled materials that were in what he's going to be selling to the school district. So I mean, it's certainly the kind of thing that carries all the way through the way these products are made. It's important to end users too.
It really is. When you were saying California, I'm not surprised to hear that they were already asking about the recycled materials content. It's coming down the pipeline. It's from a carbon emission standpoint. There are a lot of steel mills that are looking at carbon neutral, I'll say, or carbon reduction methods in the United States. But generally speaking, I mean, 70% and growing of the steel market is made from recycled materials already. And that's just something that's more or less always been happening, at least for many decades in the United States, and it's growing. So it's something that you're probably already pretty well familiar with and prepared for when that question comes. You can easily say, okay, this coil came from this particular mill. I already know that it's,
Yep.
generally speaking, how much it's from recycled materials.
Yeah, and in this case, even the mills have some guidance to that right on their website. So they put it out there because people are asking. It's important.
Yes, absolutely. I saw a post recently that was talking about manufacturers, and they need to make more of their products with recycling in mind. And I thought that was kind of interesting because cars and metal buildings and aluminum cans, those are all things that have already been in the recycling system. Like that's already something that we've been doing. So it's kind of cool to see people becoming more aware of what we're already doing and hopefully increasing that amount.
Yeah.
When you got into the industry, you answered an ad in the paper versus today, you're able to travel the country, work remote. What are some of the major differences that you've seen, or some of the really cool things that have popped up in your time in the industry? Like what's some of the biggest changes?
Well, I would say things have changed a lot over the 30 years, but it has just been mind-boggling how much change we've had just since 2020 because of the COVID. Being a salesperson, when they say stay home and don't travel, and you're not able to get in front of customers, and you're thinking, how is this ever going to work? And then project forward years now since that all started, and now customers are very fine with having conference calls, Zoom calls. The amount of travel in order to get the job done the way you did it before is less. There is still no substitute for a face-to-face meeting, and whenever possible I try to get in front of customers, but that change as a salesperson has just been mind-boggling. As far as everything else that's changed over the years, I mean, I'm struggling for the right words because it's probably not going to come out politically correct, and you can delete this if you need to.
Yes, we'll reach out to Sky behind the scenes.
Yes, because it was always what I would refer to as a good old boy network, and
Mm-hmm.
not a lot of women in the industry. And I will tell you that when I joined the paint company that I worked for, I started in November, and in January they had a sales meeting, an annual sales meeting for the entire team. And I showed up at this meeting, and I was the only female on the sales team, and there were 25 plus people. And the gentleman that I was replacing was retiring after 40 years. And I said to him, aren't there any other women that work here? And he goes, no. And I said, has there ever been a woman in sales here? And he goes, not since I've been here. This is 40 years. Now, when I left the company, 13 years some later, there were a lot of women in the sales industry. So I have seen a huge shift in women getting into this and turning it into a career, and being a part of it. The mindset about it has really changed. So
Absolutely. The perception that's out there is that it is mainly male dominated, right? And to be fair, that's probably pretty accurate. But I've been in the industry almost 2 decades at this point, and even in that short amount of time, I have seen a shift in the amount of women that have been in this industry. And part of the reason why I started this podcast is because I have met some incredible women in my career and throughout the industry. And yet when I go and I look online and I look at LinkedIn and, the various websites, et cetera, I don't see the people that I've met being represented online. And so that's part of this reason for this podcast, is to essentially say there are more women in this industry than what the perception is out there. And I want to highlight intelligent, experienced individuals like yourself on here to help encourage more people taking a look at this seriously. So instead of it being I fell into it by accident, I had friends and family, I want this to be I listened to Lisa Shelton's podcast and I was intrigued and I started looking and I found a really great job opportunity within the metals industry. I want people to seek this out, and your story and you sharing what's changed, what's coming down the pipeline, what you're excited about, I think is going to help that next generation, or even somebody that's looking for a career shift.
Yeah, I agree. And I hope you can do that. Association of Women's in the Metals Industry is an entire organization devoted to supporting women in the metals industry. And that's something else I was definitely more a part of it in the younger part of my career. As I've gotten older, not as much involved, but I think that's a great organization that supports women getting into this industry for sure.
Yes, for those that are listening, AWMI, Association of Women in the Metals Industry, it's one of my favorite associations in the metals industry. And here's why. Obviously, I'm a little biased, but it's one of the very few that are fully vertically integrated. So you're going to be able to go to the national event, to the chapter or the region event, and you're going to get the person that's from the recycled material side of things all the way down to the OEM, right? And everybody in between. And so from a networking perspective, you can see who else is in the supply chain. So if you're in that bubble where you're on a team and you might be the only female, right? You get to meet other people that maybe half their team is female, but you never would have done business with them. You never would have seen them, but you get to go to this event and you see, wait a second, there are other areas of the supply chain and other companies that may be doing a little bit better job of hiring a more diverse workforce, or maybe they've just over the years attracted a certain type of employee or person. And it's a fantastic networking event to showcase that.
Yeah, for sure. Yep.
What are you looking forward to in the industry? Like we've talked about some cool technology that you've seen.
That's an easy question for me to answer. The one that there haven't been a lot of innovations in the coil coating industry. The industry started in the 70s, I believe it was, and it started off where they were painting aluminum metal for Venetian blinds, the little slats. They were painting a wide coil and cutting little slats, and it started as Venetian blinds and has grown from there. But it was almost always solid colors. When you painted something, think of white goods, washer dryers, solid colors. So the biggest innovation that has come out in the industry has been the ability to digitally print coil coated material and literally put any kind of pattern that you want on there, and multiple patterns within a coil. One side of the coil versus another side of the coil would be, different patterns, different colors. And this brings so many new opportunities to decor and ceiling grids, just anything and everything you can think of that might have some volume but want something other than just a solid color is so exciting for me. So I am really excited about this technology. There's right now only one mill in the country that has this, but I expect that that's going to grow, just because I think that that's going to create some really neat marketing opportunities for companies to start making things out of painted material.
Yes, there have been some relatively recent innovations like that in our industry, which for somebody that's outside this industry is probably like, duh, that should have happened. But sometimes we're a little behind on some of the innovations, because a lot of the investments and the technology is invested in other spaces like medical or obviously tech. So there are a lot of opportunities to take those individuals that have that experience from other industries and transfer it to the metals industry, like the yeah, the innovation that you just talked about.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm excited. And, different company. The nice thing about working at Ryerson is that we service so many different industries that being able to come in and talk about this to somebody that makes like a window box fan, or somewhere else like the garage doors doing something that looks like a plank piece of wood, rather than the way the wood doors are now. It looks like the entire door is a single piece of wood. Well, you could do plank like hard flooring and put that across a garage door, and you can't do that in another type of a print process. So I'm just really excited about getting in front of the diverse types of customers that we get in front of as a service center, and talking about this neat technology that's out there that's never been there before.
No, it hasn't. And I have a friend in the interior design world. She works for a major publicly traded company that has retail locations across the United States. And she came into town relatively recently, and I had just actually gone to somebody that was working on printing coils with that wood grain on it,
Yeah.
so that, obviously it could weather the outside a little bit better than sometimes your traditional lumber options. And also from a sustainability standpoint, they were able to source that material, those coils, from recycled materials. You can't always do that on the lumber front, right? And so I was talking to her about this, and the company she works for is very much on a sustainable path. And I showed her these samples, and she was very excited about the opportunity to use these within and on the outside of their locations. And I think it's just it's a marketing,
Yeah.
just to get that in front of people so that they even know that that's an option.
Yeah. Yeah. And definitely when a company says we have sustainability goals, we have recyclability goals, that these are the kinds of products you want to bring to them, because they'll be excited about what they look like, and they'll be excited about meeting a goal with something that looks that neat. So
Yes, that it can be sustainable and also an excellent long-term decision, because you don't want to be replacing that in, 5 years or having to repaint it or something along those lines. Like, that is going to be a longer term investment for you.
absolutely. Yep.
Is there any advice that you would give to somebody that's looking to get into this industry? Anything that you've learned over the years, or just anything in general to help kind of encourage more people getting involved?
Well, certainly, you mentioned it when you talked about AWMI, that you can get in this thing all the way from the recycling all the way to the OEM, and
Mm-hmm.
any company that's making something that's made out of metal is going to have a use for metal products. You might find your way into this industry as starting with the OEM that makes things out of metal, and then work your way back up through that supply chain. Or like I did, I was at the low end of the supply chain and worked my way the other direction. There's no right or wrong way to get into it. Just get into it. Just get in there and try it and ask questions. And I think my other piece of advice would probably be seek out a mentor. Seek out a person who you look up to, who you respect, who you think can help you in making good decisions to guide your career. Because when I look back on some of the things that helped me be successful, it's because I had people that I worked with and worked for that I feel like they coached me, they believed in me, they saw my desire to learn, and they wanted to help me learn more. So ask questions. There's no such thing as a dumb question, and find people that are willing to help you with your understanding, and you can just do a lot just by being that kind of a personality where you just want to learn.
That's probably the best piece of advice for the metals industry is, to tie it into the beginning of our conversation. There isn't a school for this. I mean, yes, you could go to metallurgy school, but the most training that you're going to get is on the job, and it's from individuals like yourself that have the knowledge and the experience, and we teach it to the next generation. And it's just, I've learned the most from site visits and talking to individuals like yourself. And learning from folks that are in this industry. It really is a very welcoming and knowledge sharing industry.
Yep, everybody that works in it, if they've been in it, a lot of people just get in it and stay. They might move around, they might not be at the same
Mhm.
company, stay in the industry because it's exciting. It's always something new to learn, and there's always things going on. Working at a mill or working at a steel service center, if you work at an OEM, you have one end use product, and that's probably what you'll learn the most about. But the nice thing about working at a service center or a coil coater or a mill is you get to experience a lot of different industries. I mean, I remember my first tour of duty at Ryerson, all the different plants that I went through and watching how they make a Coleman cooler. I was just like blown away how they make a Coleman cooler or how they make lighting fixtures. It is so interesting. If you have any interest in how things come together and how they're made, there's no better industry to expose you to all of those things than this one. So
I could not agree more. And just for people that are listening that are unfamiliar with Ryerson, Ryerson is a huge publicly traded company. You have 40,000-40,000 employees, 100+ locations. So I'm not surprised to hear that you were able to see all the different things that your products go into. Ryerson is one of those names that most people are probably not familiar with, but I guarantee you they probably have a Ryerson product in their home at some point.
yep, been around for many, 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 many years. So
Mhm.
long. Yep.
Lisa, thank you so much for coming on, taking the time. I appreciate it. You're prepping for going on the road, so I love this. It's not the traditional office backdrop. It just really gives a better perspective of all the different options that are available in the metals industry. So again, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It was fun.